Alright, so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be replacing the fuel pump on my car. So I do have the one already in the car that came with my stock engine, but since I'm doing a replacement from a 7MG to a 1JZ, I'm going to need, or don't need to necessarily, but I really want to upgrade the fuel pump because the 1JZ is going to be, it has a higher horsepower and it runs a turbo, so it may or may not need more fuel. Actually, it probably won't need much more considering that it's actually a smaller engine by half a liter. But since we're doing the swap, I kind of want to do this all right, so I did grab a Walbro 255 fuel pump, and I'm going to go ahead and be putting that in. So that's what we're going to be going after today. Alright, so we got the trunk cleared out. It's looking like this, just all dusty with the spare tire. What we're going to do while we're in here though is we're going to go ahead and unplug these wires because we need to drop out the whole fuel tank, and that's going to kind of suck. So we're going to go ahead and unplug those and then start dropping the tank out. Alright, next up what we're going to be doing, since that's unplugged now, is we're going to go underneath the car and try to drain the tank. This may be the biggest challenge for me because I have my diffuser on right now and that may be a bit in the way, but we're going to try to work our way underneath and go ahead and get that tank drained out. Well, you may have saw that no gas came out. May or may not be because my car's on jack stands and looks like there's a bit of a dent in the tank, which isn't great, but it'll still work. But also, the tank was really low. I know it was like way below a quarter tank before I even took the engine out, so we should be fairly safe there. If there is anything, we'll just dump it and get new stuff. Anyway, though, next thing up is we're going to take off the 4 screws around the filler neck so we can get this cover off so we can drop the tank out. Alright, we got the filler neck cover off, so that's all clear to go ahead and drop out. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop down underneath. I got a jack down there holding up partially the tank, and we're going to take off the straps above the shield to come off underneath, and then we're going to disconnect the 3 fuel lines. So there's 3 fuel lines. There's the actual gas pressure line. Oh man, there's the vapor line, and then there's one more. I think it's the return line. Anyway, so those 3 are going to need to come off, and then we also need to take off the shielding. I think it said that's bunch of 10mm bolts, and then the 2 straps are 17mm bolts. So I'm just gonna kind of set you guys down there. It may be a little awkward for you guys to see since it's kind of under the car, but I'm gonna set you guys down, and then we're gonna go ahead and drop the tank out, and then replace the fuel pump, get it right back in. Alright, so the tank is out. And it is absolutely disgusting. It's actually not bad, it's just completely dusty. So yeah, that's supposed to be black. I'm gonna hit this with a quick pressure wash. But yeah, this is a mess. I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with a pressure wash. You can see there's already like piles of dirt that I already kicked off the side. But while it's out and before I take it apart, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pressure wash it. Just get it cleaned up a bit, dry it off, and then we're gonna go ahead and dive in and replace the fuel filter. And yippity yep. So let me put you guys on a little time lapse, and then we'll watch that and get right back to it. Alright, so it's all cleaned up and got some good news. So first off, it cleaned up super well. That's the goodest of the newsest, or the second goodest, I guess. The goodest of the news be that this is what we're taking off right here. You're going to take off all these bolts around, but the bolts are really not rusted. They just look perfectly fine, which is really great because I was kind of worried that they were going to be all rusted and I was going to have to work some magic to get them out, but it's great. So next thing we're going to do before we take this off is we're going to go ahead and take a pen or paint or something and mark off one of the bolts directions. That way we know where to put it back in, so that way it lines back up. So anyway, that's what we're going to do really quickly. Just give it a quick mark, doesn't have to be clean at all, and then we're going to go ahead and just take these out. So I'm just going to put you guys down and you'll watch me paint it off and then take this off, and then we'll go to the next step. Alright, so we have this old pump out, and here's what we're going to be replacing it with. It's a Walbro 255, very common upgrade because well proven and it works well. So that's what we're going with. It gives you a bunch of extra stuff. It gives you a bunch of different like filters and such to fit whichever car you have and whichever one you have. So this is what we have on the old one, and I'm just going to pop on this one because it's about the same length and same width, just a slightly different design. So I'm going to be using this one. And then for connectors, it gives you a couple options. One is this, which we can't use because we don't have the plug for the other side. So what we're going to be using is this red and black wire connector. This will go into the top of the pump here, and then we're going to have to cut the ground wire and the positive wire and go ahead and splice these ones in. I believe they gave us connectors, though I didn't see any off the top of my first look. Yeah, I'm not seeing any connectors for this, so we're going to have to find another way around these. I actually think I have some. Alright, so I found some crimps that I had laying around at the house. You could always just solder it and shrink wrap it if you want. Though if you do solder it, just know, don't use tape to cover it up. I know it'll work for the most part, but you're risking your tape coming undone and then floating around in your gas tank, which you don't want. So if you do solder, make sure you use shrink wrap, but we're just going to be using crimps for this purpose. And the majority of times I've seen the kits came with those, so I'm not sure why mine didn't, or if I'm just missing it or what. So anyway, let's go ahead and get to work. What we're going to need to do is we're going to start by taking this apart so we can make the measurements based off that. Then we're going to cut the hose, attach it to the end of this, stick this on the bottom here, and then just pretty much assemble it all, everything. But we're going to go cutting the wires, and I'll show you guys that step, and I'll kind of walk you guys through afterwards to kind of show you what I did. So I'm going to set you guys up, and let's go ahead and get right to it. We're going to take a quick pause so I can show you what I've done so far. So we have pretty much all we did was disconnect the old one, take it off and put the new hose on, and then put the new filter on. You just press it down, there's a little clamp washer thingy that goes on the other side of the little white post that clamps on. You got the bag on there nicely, got this on, got the hose connected all there. It's looking great. So next thing you're going to do, there's pretty much 2 steps left for the pump part at least. It's going to need to connect the wires. So here's the positive and here's the negative. You know it's a negative because it's going straight to this metal thing, which means that it's just a ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to plug it in here, and then we're going to want to mesh up the wires right about in the middle there. So we're going to go ahead and splice these off here, splice that off there, and then we're going to go ahead and mesh up. Something else we're going to want to do is we're going to want to zip tie the pump to the actual rail, so that way it's not flopping around when we're driving, because it does sit in there pretty nicely, but you still just don't want all the pressure to be on the hose. You want none of the pressure to be on the hose and all of it just to be on the clamps holding it down. So I'm going to put you guys up again, and then we're going to go ahead and splice and crimp the wires, and then zip tie the pump to the thing, and then Alright, so this fuel filter install is pretty much all done. We got this part done. Next thing is just going to be putting everything in reverse order. So we got the pump on, it's all zip tied down, got one here, and this one's just to hold the wires in. It's not holding it at all, though it does kind of hold the hose, so I guess it helps, but it's really not doing anything. It's just making sure these wires aren't flopping anywhere. Anyway, the wires are all crimped up. Those are good to go. Give them a little tug on each side, which I did, just to make sure they're in there. So that's set, this is set, this is set. We got our paint mark up top, so next thing we are going to do is we're going to go ahead and run over to back to where the fuel tank is and go ahead and put this in. Alright, so it's the same 6 bolts up top, 6 bolts, 7 bolts, but just make sure you mark it off with the paint mark, lines up with the paint mark up here. You're kind of going to have to wiggle it in. Just get all 6 screws or 7 screws in, you're good to go. Alright, that's all on. So now the fun part of trying to lift this up and just get it back in the tank. So the hardest part is actually just going to be getting the fuel neck back up through, but aside from that, it should be straightforward, though not saying it's easy. So I'm going to go ahead and just catch up to you guys back once it's up, because I'm not sure how long it'll take to get up. But yeah, go ahead and get a jack. Got one there, helped lift it up, put it in, get the straps on, then get the shielding on, and neck through, and you're all set to go. Alright, so we got the tank back in. It's all sitting in there, nice and buttoned up. I got the diffuser back up, the shield's back on, holding that side out, the belts are on. All that's good, just a couple more steps. So we have to put, oh my gosh, these freaking bugs are everywhere. Anyway, we got to put this neck back, or this back on the filler neck, and then plug in those 2 things, and then we are actually all set to go. So that's really it. It's pretty straightforward, just a little time consuming. I'll put you guys down. You'll get to watch me screw in a couple bolts, plug in a couple wires, and we're gonna be all done. And that is it. So your fuel pump has now been completely installed, which is fantastic. So took out the old one, which we got here, and replaced with the new Marlboro 255 fuel pump, which should definitely keep up with the 2J or the 1JZ that I'm putting in the engine. So if you guys want to see more progress of what's happening with this car specifically, go ahead and just consider subscribing to the channel, as well as follow my Instagram at PhilSuper. I post a lot of updates on there, as well as I'm documenting the whole process here on YouTube for you guys to watch. I'm just kidding, it's mostly for me, but you can join along if you want. Anyway, that's really about it. So we're going to be continuing on with the rest of the build in the next upcoming days. Got a couple videos maybe coming out in between, but that should be what's happening. That didn't clear anything up, but I just told you some words. Hopefully that does nothing. I don't know what I'm going with this. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget, dislike, unsubscribe, leave the hate in the comments. Alright guys, bye!